We've got a very special Earth Day program today, but I wanted to introduce our panel. Morgan Mann, she's a Community Relations Director with Door County Library.
Hello.
And then Janine, no, you're fine. And Janine Brennan, our Interim Branch Manager at the Egg Harbor Library. And finally, Dave LaLuzerne, he was with us last week for the Spring Herbs of Door County. And he is also my co-chair for the Everyday's Earth Day Festival, which got pushed to next year due to COVID, but we do have his program that he was going to do. So.
Should I take over?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Hello folks, I'm out here today on the shores of Lake Michigan. It's a beautiful day, but a little chilly for spring, wouldn't you say? I'd like to walk along the beach here, and I was thinking about climate change a lot lately, and I have been wondering what kind of effects climate change will have on health for the United States, around the world for that matter. And so I did a little searching and put together this presentation.
Ed Maybach, a professor at George Mason University who studies climate change and public health, recently said that we are certainly underreacting to climate change because it is a potentially catastrophic health threat that is likely to greatly harm human health and well-being for many generations to come. Climate change has long been seen as an approaching risk, one that will only affect people sometime in the future. A little less than half of Americans believe that climate change is harming US residents right now. Despite recent devastating wildfires in California and Australia and rapid ice melt at the poles, the framing of climate change as a long-term problem relegates it to back of mind for many. So my intention is to present some of the ways that climate change is affecting our health already and will affect our health in the future. Climate change is predicted to significantly reduce water access and increase flooding, which elevates the risk of water-related diseases and floods. Floods are one of the deadliest weather-related hazards in the US, second only to heat. These are some, this is an interesting series of maps, spring flood risk potential. This is put out by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to show what are the flood risks in the coming spring. And the map starts with 2015. This is 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and this is the current one for the spring flood outlook. You can see that we up in Door County are actually in the minor part. Unless you're south of Sturgeon Bay, then it's moderate problems with flooding. So what does this mean? Increased flooding can overwhelm a region's drainage and wastewater treatment systems and be toxic to people, animals, and plants. Sewer overflows are anticipated to increase, and the aging water infrastructure may not be able to withstand the extreme precipitation, leading to leaching of sewage in the ground. Other hazards can appear after a storm has passed. For example, a damp or flooded building can develop mold. Mold affects indoor air quality. Living with poor air quality and in damp conditions has been shown to increase health problems. These health problems include aggravation of allergies, asthma, and other respiratory tract symptoms, such as coughing and wheezing due to mold exposure. They also include lower respiratory tract infections like pneumonia. Reactions to mold exposures are an especially troublesome problem for people with asthma or weakened immune systems. Now, one of the particular problems in Wisconsin are the CAFOs, particularly in Waunakee, where they're having a lot of problems in Waunakee County with their wells being contaminated. These operations generate large quantities of manure, both liquid and solid. The bacteria, phosphorus, nitrates, and other substances in manure can contaminate water supplies. The management and disposal of this manure is the source of many of the problems that can arise from one of these facilities. To put the amount of manure generated in context, a dairy CAFO with 2,500 cows generates the same amount of waste as a city of 410,000 residents. Unlike cities, however, CAFOs do not treat sewage they produce. And another area that I think that people can take action on their own as far as contamination is don't fertilize your lawn. In many areas where there are lakes, the runoff from excess water, rain, and flooding gets into the lakes and carries a lot of fertilizer in there, which leads to algae growth and other problems. Of course, the other part of that is the drought. People living in other end of that spectrum, I should say, is the drought. People living in drought conditions may be more likely to encounter certain dangerous situations. These can range from dust storms to flash floods. Wildfires associated with drought conditions greatly reduce air quality. This poor air quality affects people's health in a number of ways. Wildfire smoke exposure increases respiratory and cardiovascular hospitalizations and medical visits to lung illnesses. It also increases the need for treatments for asthma, bronchitis, and other breathing problems. The frequency of wildfires is expected to increase as drought conditions become more prevalent. So that kind of brings us to the whole issue of air quality. So longer warm seasons are going to result in longer pollen seasons and therefore longer allergy seasons. Higher temperatures, changes in precipitation, increased carbon dioxide levels, and changes in plant growth patterns all contribute to a longer and more intense allergy season. For example, higher carbon dioxide levels increase pollen levels and pollen potency. Longer and more intense pollen seasons have negative effects on the respiratory system, especially among those with allergies or asthma. This is particularly true of ragweed season. Now here's a chart that was developed, this is in New Jersey, and this shows the increase in pollen counts over a 17-year period in New Jersey. So allergy season has become longer and more intense and causes 3.8 million missed work and school days each year. Asthma is responsible for nearly 2 million emergency department visits each year and costs $56 billion per year. In the United States, 17.7 million adults and 6.3 million children have asthma, and about 30% of adults and 40% of children suffer from allergies. So these numbers can all be expected to go up as the temperature increases and the climate changes.
And Dave, what was really just to kind of jump in, what was the conference that you went to? It was the healthcare professionals and environmental impact.
There's a group called the Wisconsin Health Professionals for Climate Action. And I'll mention a little bit of information I got from there. And that was healthcare professionals are concerned about the effects that hospitals are having on climate change, as well as the effects that climate change will have on the ability of hospitals to deal with issues. You know, there was actually just recently a study that just came out about the COVID virus, and they found that a 7% increase in particulate matter in the air leads to a 15% stronger reaction to the COVID virus.
Interesting.
So air pollution and ambient air pollution, which we'll be talking about here, are really problems that have to do with your respiratory system in particular.
Interesting. Okay, sorry.
So climate change increases the amount of airborne pollutants in the environment. Ambient pollutions include particulate matter, carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, and volatile organic compounds. When sunlight combines with oxides of nitrogen and volatile organic compounds, increased ozone levels result. And interesting sidelight here, coal use is responsible for 480,000 premature deaths from particulate air pollution each year. So coal phase out is a crucial, no regrets public health intervention. So ground level ozone, a key component of smog, is associated with many health problems, including diminished lung function, increased hospital admissions and emergency department visits for asthma, and increases in premature deaths. In addition to asthma, it is important to note that these exposures are associated with adverse cardiovascular effects. Here's a chart, talk a little bit about the gases. You know, carbon dioxide is the main one that we often talk about as far as climate change. And you can see it's a major portion, total of about 76%. But these other gases have an impact too. I just wanted to mention them briefly. Carbon dioxide is the primary natural, primary natural carbon dioxide sources include ocean release, animal and plant respiration, organic matter decomposition, forest fires, and volcanic eruptions. While the primary human-made carbon dioxide sources include fossil fuel burning, cement production, and farmland plowing. Methane. There are 6 major sources of atmospheric methane: emission from anaerobic decomposition of natural wetlands and paddy rice fields, emission from livestock production systems, biomass burning, anaerobic decomposition of waste in landfills, and fossil methane emission during exploration and transport of fuels. Nitrous oxide, the major natural sources of nitrous oxide include soils under natural vegetation and tundra and the oceans. Important human sources come from agriculture with the addition of nitrous oxide fertilizers and soil cultivation, livestock manure, biomass or fossil fuels combustion, and industrial processes. Nitrous oxide has a global warming potential 310 times that of carbon dioxide. Now there's a group of what they call the fluorocarbon gases. They are frequently used in air conditioning and as refrigerants in place of the older chlorofluorocarbons. Their ability to trap heat radiating off the earth is hundreds of thousands of times more potent than that of carbon dioxide.
You can take a picture of me?
I'm I seem to have stalled here for a moment. This happened last time. I think this is my computer's fault, not the internet's fault. Okay, well, we can go on. I think I was also going to talk about some other gases here. Let me see. Oh, shoot. Sorry about this. There you go.
There we go. Yeah. Just
Okay,
making
sorry.
an angry noise.
So perfluorocarbons are extremely powerful greenhouse gases with very long atmospheric lifetimes. The release of man-made perfluorocarbons is on the rise due to increasing aluminum and semiconductor chip manufacture. Annual releases of PFM, the most abundant perfluorocarbon, are the global warming equivalent to about 70 megatons of carbon dioxide, roughly 0.5% of the amount of carbon dioxide released annually. Interestingly, PFCs are used to improve microcirculatory oxygen delivery for treatments of reduced blood flow in tissues, such as in conditions like stroke, heart attacks, burns, and with decreased blood flow to arms and legs. So it's actually used medicinally. Sulfohexafluoride is used in the electrical industry as a gaseous dielectric medium for high voltage circuit breakers, switchgear, and often replacing oil and circuit breakers that contain harmful PCBs. It is also used as a contrast agent for ultrasound imaging. Sulfur hexafluoride microbubbles are administered in solution through injection into a peripheral vein. These microbubbles enhance the visibility of blood vessels to ultrasound. It remains visible in the blood for 3 to 8 minutes, and then it is exhaled in the lungs. And they've discovered that there's a problem in our electrical grid where a lot of these systems that have been using the sulfohexafluoride are starting to leak it into the atmosphere. Sorry about this, I'm having issues again. All right. Interestingly enough, anesthetic gases are also a problem. Worldwide yearly sales of inhaled anesthetics total in the millions of liters. A busy mid-sized human hospital in the US might purchase about 1,000 liters of inhaled anesthetics each year. This could yield the equivalent emissions of up to 1,200 passenger cars each year from a single mid-sized hospital. It is estimated that total global emissions of inhaled anesthetics are equivalent to 9.5 million tons of carbon dioxide annually. That equates to the emissions from 1 million cars. So here's an interesting chart, a breakdown of deaths attributed to pollution by pathway. So we've talked about ambient air pollution. There's the household air pollution, contaminated sites, water and sanitation and hygiene, and total pollution. So you can see it has effects. This is a worldwide a chart that was developed by the WHO, World Health Organization, in 2012. So this is worldwide, almost 9 million deaths associated with pollution. And deaths due to diarrhea, stroke, pulmonary disease, lung cancer, and different other cancers. So, little action page here. What do we do? Plant trees. One of the things that trees do is they sequester carbon dioxide. So there's a big movement going on around the world to plant more trees. And I think that we were doing that here in Door County, and I think individuals can do it on their own property as well. More trees, the better. Another thing that you can do for yourself is to, get some color in your diet. Antioxidants are compounds that inhibit oxidation. Interestingly enough, that almost invariably the same chemicals that are antioxidant action are the same chemicals that give the fruits and flowers their color. So oxidation is a chemical reaction that can produce free radicals, thereby leading to chain reactions that may damage the cells of the body. So what are sources of free radicals? Smoking. There are dietary sources like rancid fats and excess carbohydrates. Environmental toxins like pesticides, solvents, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, heavy metals like arsenic and iron. Medications like acetaminophen, which is Tylenol, cancer chemotherapy, ionizing radiation like ultraviolet, X-rays and radon, and air pollutants like carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and ozone. So the idea here is to get more color, more fruits and vegetables into your diet to counteract the effects of these free radicals that you can be inhaling or drinking in your water, basically. So extreme heat events can trigger a variety of heat stress conditions such as heat stroke. Heat stroke is the most serious heat-related disorder. It occurs when the body becomes unable to control its temperature. Body temperature rises rapidly, the sweating mechanism fails, and the body cannot cool down. This condition can cause death or permanent disability if emergency treatment is not given. Small children, the elderly, and certain other groups, including people with chronic diseases, low-income populations, and outdoor workers have higher risks for heat-related illness. Now here's an interesting map. It was the observed US temperature change from 1991 to 2012. And as you can see, there's been a lot of changes. And if you look at the map, Door County is right there at the top of the list, if you will, for increased temperature changes. What this is doing is it's causing, as we'll see in a few moments, it's causing the expansion of the range of various insects, among other things. So higher temperatures and respiratory problems are also linked. One reason is because higher temperatures contribute to the buildup of harmful air pollutants. Many cities across the United States, including St. Louis, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Cincinnati, have seen large increases in death rates during heat waves. So here's an action plan, perhaps, for helping to deal with the effects, with the heating effects. and that is to use cooling plants. And as you can see, I have up there, I have hibiscus, the red flower, and lemons, and watermelon, and cucumbers, and borage. And all those, I mean, I love hibiscus as a drink. I make like a lemonade type drink with hibiscus flowers, and it's just delicious. And of course, eating the watermelon and the cucumbers, all these things will help to cool you down a little bit. They're considered cooling plants, cooling herbs, and that can help to deal with the effects of excessive heat. So I don't know if you can see the little cartoon there, but top one, the guy is saying, I've got one to add to the list as he's being carried off by a large mosquito. And the other scientist is writing down the negative effects of climate change. So it all has to do with what we call vector-borne disease. One way climate change might affect human health is by increasing the risk of vector-borne diseases. A vector is any organism such as fleas, ticks, or mosquitoes that can transmit a pathogen or infectious agent from one host to another. Because warmer average temperatures can mean longer warm seasons, earlier spring seasons, shorter and milder winters, and hotter summers, conditions might become more hospitable for many carriers of vector-borne diseases. This map here is showing the spread of the A. aegypti mosquitoes across the United States up from South America, and the A. aegypti is the carrier of the Zika virus. So Zika, its name comes from the Zika forest of Uganda, where the virus was first isolated in 1947. Zika virus is related to the dengue, yellow fever, Japanese encephalitis, and West Nile viruses. Since the 1950s, it has been known to occur within a narrow equatorial belt from Africa to Asia. From 2007 to 2016, the virus spread eastward across the Pacific Ocean to the Americas, leading to the 2015-2016 Zika virus epidemic. Zika can spread from a pregnant woman to her baby. This can result in microcephaly, severe brain malformations, and other birth defects. Ebola. The climate crisis is going to raise the risk that Ebola will spread farther and reach areas previously unaffected by the virus, according to a recent study published in the journal Nature Communications. The study found that the climate crisis will bring a 1.75 to 3.2-fold increase in the rate at which the deadly virus spills over from animals to humans by 2070. Lyme's disease is another one that we have in this country, and you can see the interesting map there for how it spread from 1996 to 2014. Climate change will have the following effects on Lyme disease: an acceleration of the tick's developmental cycle, a prolonged developmental cycle, increased egg production, increased population density, and a broader range of risk areas. The ideal habitat for these disease-carrying ticks is one with 85% humidity and a temperature higher than 45 degrees. I've already had experience with the Lyme's disease and ended up in the hospital. Actually, I wouldn't recommend tackling it too readily.
Well, and I think that the ticks are just out a lot earlier now than they have been too, just given the warmer temperatures, that it just elongates the season.
Exactly. So that's part of the problem. You know, that's what's happening with the climate change issues.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprisingly, wildfires, heavy rainfall, flooding, and windstorms increase stress and anxiety. When the weather feels unpredictable and out of control, people's mental health suffers. Many people exposed to climate-related or weather-related disasters experience stress and serious mental health consequences, including PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, general anxiety, substance abuse, and strains on social relationships. Specific groups of people are at higher risk for distress and other adverse mental health consequences from exposure to climate or weather-related disasters. These are children, the elderly, women, especially pregnant and postpartum, people with pre-existing mental illness, economically disadvantaged, homeless, and first responders. Now, another issue that we're going to have to deal with is food and food production and food quality. So if you follow along with the chart, the potential interactions of rising carbon dioxide and climate change on food safety. At the farm level, temperature and precipitation extremes like flooding can increase pathogen load. That includes things like salmonella. Climate can also alter weed, insect, and fungal populations and increase pesticide use. Rising carbon dioxide can directly influence nutritional contents of food. Warmer temperatures can result in greater food spoilage. And then extreme climate events can disrupt food distribution. So getting the food from farm to the table can become more of a problem. So climate change is expected to lead to increased bacterial, viral, and pathogenic contamination of water and food by altering the features of survival and transmission patterns through changing weather characteristics such as temperature and humidity. Climate change can disrupt food availability, reduce access to food, and affect food quality. For example, projected increases in temperatures, changes in precipitation patterns, changes in extreme weather events, and reductions in water availability may all result in reduced agricultural productivity. The global food system both derives and is impacted by climate change. Without action, climate change will impact nutrition through decreased food quality and access, decreased dietary diversity, and decreased food nutritional content. So here's a world map that shows the projected impact of climate change on agricultural yields. And if you note, the area that we live in the upper Midwest actually should see an increase in agricultural yields as you go further north, because again, partly because of temperature change and also because of the way water is going to be distributed around the planet. A particular problem that we need to deal with in this country is food waste. 40% of all food produced in the US is wasted. $1 billion is the amount spent yearly to dispose of food waste. $161.6 billion is the estimated value of the lost food using retail prices. And 141 trillion calories are the estimated calories associated with food loss in 2010, or 1,249 calories per capita per day. And this is astounding when you consider that there's 40.9 million people in this US are food insecure. 12.4 million adults live in houses with very low food security, etc. So we really need to address this issue. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is through composting. I'm a big advocate. First of all, reducing food waste by 50% by 2050 could avoid emission of 26.2 gigatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Reducing waste would also avoid deforestation for additional farmland, preventing 44.4 gigatons of additional emissions. So it's really an important step to take, especially in this country, to reduce our food waste. Now, composting is a good way to do that. Increased composting could avoid methane emissions from landfills equivalent to 2.3 gigatons of CO2 by 2050. And there are many different ways you can compost. You can have a more formal setup like one of these where they have 2 or 3 bins together. Or you could buy one of these barrels that are available now for composting. Or you can just do a simple pile like a lot of people do. That's the old-fashioned way, right?
Well, and Dave, so the thing is like with composting, you're breaking the food down in the proper way, so it's not really releasing those harmful gases.
Right, because when you dump food into the landfill, it does not degrade the same way. As far as what it does, it releases a lot of methane gas, and methane is actually worse than carbon dioxide as far as the effects on temperature. So composting is a really important thing that everybody can do to help to deal with the climate change issues. So finally, I just want to talk briefly about something that we need to think about too, and it's environmental justice. Environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policy. The term environmental justice acknowledges the racial and economic disparities among communities bearing disproportionate environmental costs, like more lead, particulate air pollution, ozone smog, and other health hazards in the places people live, work, and play. All communities need tools to help them prepare for, respond to, and cope with the impacts of these and other environmental issues. This includes addressing climate change, which exacerbates risk for vulnerable populations like low-income populations and communities of color. Environmental justice is a public health issue that needs to be addressed by policymakers in all levels of government, business, and communities. So, environmental racism is nothing new. Race is the most significant predictor of a person living near contaminated air, water, or soil. 56% of the population near toxic waste sites are people of color. People of color have 38% higher nitrogen dioxide exposure, are 2 times more likely to live without potable water and modern sanitation, and have seen 95% of their claims against polluters denied by the EPA. During 2016, asthma affected 15.7% of African American children and 12.9% of children of Puerto Rican descent, while it affected 7.1% of white children. As a result of ozone increases from natural gas emissions, African American children are burdened by 138,000 asthma attacks and 101,000 lost school days each year. Out of the 500,000 total school days missed in association with ozone smog from natural gas industry pollution each year, African American children carry 20.2% of the burden, while making up only 13% of the US population. And for every dollar spent on national and state level environmental health programs, $71 in asthma-related expenditures is saved. So we need to work on that issue very much. So here's a list of the different illnesses that could be affected by climate change: asthma, allergies, weakened immune function, emphysema, bronchitis, diminished lung function for any reason, cardiovascular disease, depression, anxiety, poor nutrition. So, and today is, as you probably all know, is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And I've come to believe, and I think many of us here in Door County have come to believe, that we should make every day is Earth Day, because something needs to be done on a continuing basis, not just once a year. And that's all I got for you.
Dave, I'm gonna unmute. First off, thank you so much. I'm gonna unmute our Zoom people here, Dave and Cindy, to see if you wanted to. Cindy, I know you had a comment that you wanted to add.
Well, I was on, I don't know if anybody joined, but I joined the Nelson Institute, had their 50th anniversary Earth Day celebration on Monday. I usually go there in person. Of course, this time it was all by Zoom.
The video?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, there was a man on there, one of their speakers, and if any of you can get onto the website, the Nelson Institute, I think you can go back into it and see all this later. But there was a doctor on there, Dr. Jonathan Prats, who's actually written several books, and he's been doing a lot of studying. He's world renowned on diseases and such. And his talk about the COVID and Zika and dengue fever and yellow fever and all these diseases are coming because we are destroying our rainforests and so much of our habitat. But his speech was rather alarming. I know we don't really need any more alarming, but I really encourage people to see if you can find the speech from Dr. Jonathan Prats with the Nelson Institute Earth Day.
It's Jonathan, it's Pats with a P, P-A-T-Z.
No, it's P-R-A-T-Z, I believe.
Prats,
anyway,
Prats, yeah.
I mean, it's, like I say, it's very disheartening, but it's also very eye-opening, and it's a very great learning experience. So I highly encourage all of you to see it, because, I mean, this COVID thing, according to him, is really just basically the start. and it's only going to get worse as our climate situation gets worse. So are the diseases and everything else. So I wish our legislators would wake up and smell the coffee here, because we're running out of time.
Thanks, Cindy. Dave, also, what was the name of the professional group that the conference?
It was the Wisconsin Health Professionals for Climate Action, and Jonathan Patz is one of the founding members of that group. So
Oh, okay.
he was at that conference that you were mentioning earlier that I went to.
Great. And then Dave, can you talk a little bit about the Climate Change Coalition for Door County that you're associated with?
Okay, the Climate Change Coalition has been around since 2006, I believe, and are a group of activists around climate change issue. And primarily what we've been doing is educational efforts and outreach to the community. This year, our annual forum was a victim of the COVID virus, so we won't have it this year. But we throughout the year, we sponsor speakers and movies on different environmental and climate change issues. And anybody is usually welcome to come. A lot of the events are free. And we do have the Climate Change Coalition of Door County has a website. And from that website, you can also access the YouTube channel of the Climate Change Coalition of Door County, which has a number of videos that were taken in past year's forums and other presentations by different experts on various aspects of climate change that are all free access as well.
Yeah, and that URL is climatechangedoorcounty.com.
Right.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dave, for the presentation. And you know,
Happy to be here.
Every day is Earth Day, that's for sure.
Yes, it should be.
Janine, thank you so much for helping to coordinate this with us. And Morgan, really appreciate you co-hosting and helping make the logistics happen. So do we have anything coming up that people should know about?
Well, tomorrow we have a virtual book discussion on the Yellow House, which is a story of a woman whose family lives in New Orleans and went through Katrina. So it'll be a great discussion. Even if you haven't read the book, it'll be good to hear. And what else do we have planned, Morgan?
On Friday, we have our first social distancing book club, which is going to be at 2:00. And it is just kind of a meet and greet and for everyone to talk about whatever they are reading or watching. So you can kind of hear from a variety of different genres and topics and what are keeping people busy during this time of our lives. And we also have virtual story time going on. Every day, new stories are getting put up where there's read alouds and there's songs. And so that's a closed group. You have to opt into that group, but every day there's new postings happening there.
Yeah, and then next Thursday, we have a shipwreck photo tour with an award-winning shipwreck photographer that's shot a lot of shipwrecks on the Great Lakes. It'll be sort of a slideshow presentation, and then he'll be talking about some of the wrecks and his process of photographing them. So it should be really visually appealing.
How do we do
So
that?
I know Cindy had a question about how do you get into the book club? And we have lots of book clubs in Egg Harbor, in Door County. Egg Harbor's is tomorrow. You can go to any of them. Next week, Bailey's Harbor has a book discussion. So the way to do it is to go to our Door County Facebook page, and Morgan posts events and reminders on that page. Tomorrow at 10:30, our discussion will be live on the Facebook page of the Kress Pavilion. So if you want to find out and just test the waters, come tomorrow at 10:30 to Facebook. Just go to the Kress Pavilion's Facebook site, and it'll be open for you to join us.
And it's similar to what we did today to get on this talk. So there'll be a series of numbers that you'll post into your Zoom, and then you'll be brought into the book discussion just like we are here now.
Yep, and same for the photo thing. So we've been trying to do both. So, all right. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you again. Happy Earth Day. I know Greens and Grains was giving away trees. They may be out as of now, but hope you get to celebrate Earth Day and get out there. It's sunny right now, actually. So,
It was snowing this morning.
Yeah.
okay. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Happy Earth Day.
Thanks.
Happy Earth Day.